How's it going, everyone? This is Nick. I'm back here with another ReVenture YouTube cast, and I'm really excited today because we're going to take a deep dive into one of my favorite cities in the US. What city is that? That is Miami, Florida. And we're going to take a look at two key questions and find answers to them by the end of the video. Those questions are, number one, is now the right time to buy real estate in Miami? Should home buyers and real estate investors buy now, or should they wait? The second question we're going to ask is, what are the best areas of Miami to buy? What are the zip codes and the neighborhoods that are going to have the most real estate appreciation going into the future? We're going to use deep data to answer both of these questions, and this video is going to be very useful for anyone who lives in Miami, anyone who's looking to move to Miami, and anyone who's looking to buy real estate in Miami. You're going to want to watch this video. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we can't talk about Miami real estate without addressing the elephant in the room. That's right, and that would be Miami's tumultuous real estate history. Yeah, that's right. So back in the mid to late 2000s, Miami's real estate market got crushed. Home values, home prices went down by more than 50%, 50%. That's right. So a homeowner in Miami would have lost half the value in their home from about 2007 to 2011 over those 4 years. Values went down from on average about $340,000 to about $170,000. Lots of people lost their homes to foreclosure. Lots of real estate investors got wiped out. So I think the question on everyone's mind is Miami a safe place to invest right now, or is it going to go back and revert to how it did 10 to 15 years ago, and is there going to be another real estate crash? And you can see Miami's volatile real estate history evidenced in this graph, which looks at the typical home price in Miami with data from Zillow, the typical home price in Miami over the last 20 years compared to the US average. So Miami here is the purple line, and you can see that today, January 2021, Miami's typical home price is $323,000. That's slightly above the US average of $269,000. But if we go back in time, we see dramatic differences between the two. Whereas the US average, the gray line, had a dip going from about 2007 to 2012. Miami had like a roller coaster like crash in that period. So you could see starting in the early 2000s, values in Miami's shot up all the way to $334,000 in late 2006. That was close to the peak. And then values proceeded to crash down to $160,000 over the next 4 to 5 years. Wow, what a real estate crash. Now, since then, Miami's real estate values have rebounded, but you can see that today, at $323,000 typical value, we're still below the highs of '06. If you guys are enjoying the data presented in this video, please hit subscribe down below. Please also make sure to like and to comment on the video. Leave me your feedback. I love producing this content. I love sharing this data with you guys, but it makes it easier for me to do that if you interact with the video. So once again, please like, comment, and subscribe. All right, let's get back to it. So that's the first data point that makes me feel better. It makes me feel good about buying in Miami now, is that while prices have gone up a lot over the last 5 to 10 years, they're still well below the previous peak. And if you kind of look at the long-term trend in Miami real estate growth from 2000 to 2020, 2021, it makes sense. It's not as if values today have careened out of control to $450,000 or $500,000. If that were the case, I would definitely be saying don't buy in Miami. But since values in Miami today are still reasonable compared to the US average and where they were historically, I think that's a sign of more safety in the Miami real estate market now compared to 10 to 15 years ago. So Miami's real estate values being more reasonable today than they were 15 years ago should make home buyers and real estate investors feel pretty good, much better about buying in Miami now than 10 to 15 years ago. But there's also another thing that we need to look at, and that's housing supply. So real estate is based on supply and demand. A lot of people like to focus on demand. They look at things like job growth, population growth, et cetera, et cetera. But supply is just as important. That is, how many new homes and apartments are being built in a city or a metro area each year. And what was happening in Miami back in the mid-2000s, along with many other markets in the US, is that there was a significant amount of overbuilding. They were permitting and building too many new homes and apartment units for how many people were moving and living in the city. So when you combine, the escalating values that we saw in the previous graph in '06 with lots and lots of new units getting delivered, that's a recipe for a hardcore real estate crash. So the other thing we want to look at now is not just what values look like in Miami today, but what does the real estate supply pipeline look like? Is Miami still overbuilding? Are they still building too many new homes and apartments? If that's the case, we'd probably want to avoid Miami. Or is Miami building a fair amount of new homes and apartments for the people that are living there? And so we're going to answer that question by looking at this graph, which looks historically over the last 20 years, looks at the amount of permits pulled for new homes and new apartments in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale metro area. So one thing that sticks out looking at this graph is just how many new homes and apartments were being permitted in Miami in the mid-2000s. We can see in 2004, there was a high of 45,000 new homes and apartments permitted for construction. Those were then built over the next couple of years. You can see '05, there was also 42,000 permits for new homes and construction. Lots and lots of new building, and Miami just quite simply didn't have enough demand to fill those units, and that's one of the reasons why prices dropped so much from 2007 to 2011. But then you can see things changed a lot. So, with the great real estate crash, the great financial crash, permitting went all the way down to a low of 4,000 in 2009. It literally got cut down by a factor of 10. Since then, it's rebounded, and it stayed fairly stable since 2013, around roughly 20,000 new units permitted for construction each year. And you can see that 20,000 is well below. We are well below here over the last 3 years, the permitting that was being done in the early to mid 2000s. And that is a good thing for Miami real estate owners. You're not going to have to worry about like a glut of new housing getting delivered to the market, like which happened 10 to 15 years ago. So if you're a real estate investor in Miami or a home buyer, this is another positive sign for you that not only are values more reasonable today, but the city is permitting much less new housing than they were 10 to 15 years ago. So it's unlikely that there's a housing glut, right? There's a housing shortage in Miami. There's not enough new homes and apartments getting built. But if you're a home buyer or a real estate investor in Miami, I know the question you're asking yourself right now. Oh, okay, great. I feel good about buying in Miami in general, but where do I buy in Miami? After all, Miami is a massive place, over 6 million people in the metro area, tons and tons of land area, tons and tons of just different neighborhoods with different things going on, and there's lots of variation in how much real estate prices grow or decline across Miami. So we need to start looking deeper and ask ourselves, what are the zip codes within Miami that home buyers and real estate investors should target for appreciation over the next 2 years, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years? What are the zip codes in the neighborhoods that are going to deliver the most appreciation? And the best place to start is to just understand what's happened over the last 5 years. What are the areas that have seen the most growth over the last 5 years? So what we're looking at on this map are the different zip codes in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale metro area, and the shading of the zip code shows how much real estate prices have grown over the last 5 years. So the greener the zip code looks, the more growth there has been. The more translucent or the more orange the zip code looks, the less growth there has been. So let's just zoom in. The first thing that pops out is this pocket here, kind of north of downtown Miami. Let's zoom in and see what's going on. So we can see in a zip code like 33142, there's been 72% growth in the typical home value over the last 5 years. That's crazy appreciation. That's almost 15% per year in 33142. That's right next to 33127, which has seen 48% growth over the last 5 years. You might know this zip code 33127 as the zip code where Wynwood is. Wynwood's one of the most popular, fastest growing destinations in Miami. Lots of bars, lots of restaurants, quickly gentrifying area. 33127 seen 48% value growth. And if you just kind of go up this northern corridor, 33150, 33147, 33167, 33168, all of these zip codes have done really well in appreciation over the last 5 years. That is in stark contrast to the zip codes here in orange. For instance, on South Beach, 33139, South Beach prices have actually declined. That's right, they've gone down by 10% over the last 5 years. If you had bought in South Beach 5 years ago, you'd have lost money on your real estate investment to this point. 33140, Miami Beach, similar situation. Values have gone down by 10%. And if you just keep going up the coast, you see a similar situation. All the way up here to Aventura, minus 5%, Sunny Isles Beach, minus 7%. So, it's an interesting situation going on in Miami. These, what are more high-price zip codes that are right on the water, they've actually performed very poorly over the last 5 years, while the more inner Miami zip codes, over here in green, those have done the best over the last 5 years in terms of appreciation. So that begs the question, why have those inner city Miami zip codes done so well in terms of appreciation over the last 5 years? Why have those more expensive coastal zip codes, South Beach, Miami Beach, Aventura, why have they done so poorly in terms of real estate appreciation? And there's actually a pretty funny relationship that explains a lot of this differential, and that's the poverty rate in these zip codes. So interestingly enough, the higher the poverty rate in the zip code in Miami, the higher the real estate growth over the last 5 years. The lower the poverty rate and the more wealthy the zip code, the lower the real estate growth over the last 5 years. So on the left, we're looking at home value growth over the last 5 years with data from Zillow, the one we just looked at before. And on the right, we're looking at the poverty rate by zip code. This is data from the US Census, and it looks at the percentage of households in the zip code who fall below the poverty line in their earnings. And that's roughly income below $20,000 a year for the household, although it depends based on the number of people that are in the household. However, you can see really the strong relationship between the two. So for instance, 33054 Miami Gardens, 34% poverty rate in the zip code. Over 1/3 of households are below the poverty line. That's extremely high. That's an extremely poverty-stricken area. However, that area has seen a 55% increase in home prices over the last 5 years, with the typical price going from $175,000 to $271,000. 33142. Similar situation. Prices have gone up by 72%, yet the poverty rate is 34%. Again, very high poverty rate, very high appreciation. 33127, that's Wynwood. Despite all of its gentrification and growth, it still has a 31% poverty rate, which is very high. It's seen 48% appreciation over the last 5 years. Now, the exact opposite situation exists when we start going to the high-price coastal zip codes. So again, 33140 in Miami Beach, that zip code has lost 10% of its home value price over the last 5 years. So owners in 33140 who bought 5 years ago have lost value. They've lost equity. They've lost money, net worth in their home. However, 33140 is a very nice zip code. 7.7% poverty rate is very low. It's a very wealthy area. It's a very nice area, yet it's seeing real estate declines. So this begs the question, what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years? Are we going to see these poor inner city Miami zip codes continue to deliver superior real estate returns? Or are we going to see kind of a reversion to the mean where these zip codes start to do worse or even decline, and then maybe the coastal zip codes start picking up the slack again? To be honest, I'm not a fan of these inner city poverty-stricken Miami zip codes in terms of real estate investment. If you're a home buyer, if you're a real estate investor and you want appreciation, they've definitely delivered it over the last 5 years. I don't think they're going to continue to deliver it over the next 5 to 10 years. But if you look back historically, it's typically these type of neighborhoods that get hit the hardest during downturns. They have the biggest run-ups and then they get hit the hardest. Generally speaking, real estate speculators and investors start gambling on properties in these areas. They start overpaying and maybe like renovating properties more than they should. And when things go down, these neighborhoods tend to suffer. So if you're looking for appreciation going forward, I would not necessarily recommend buying into these more inner city poverty-stricken zip codes. With that said, I also would not necessarily recommend buying on the higher price coastal zip codes in Miami Beach, South Beach, Coral Gables, because the price points in these areas are already very high to begin with. And when price points are really high to begin with, it's hard to achieve long-term growth. There's also seems to be some concern in Miami over sea level rise, and that might be one of the reasons why these coastal zip codes have done so poorly over the last 5 years. Is that in the case of like future hurricanes or future sea level rise, maybe your real estate there will be more exposed. What I would suggest for investors is to try to find something in the middle. Try to find zip codes that are not necessarily the most expensive or the wealthiest, or not the poorest with the most growth. Find something in the middle where there's solid growth rates, not too much poverty, and decent affordability. If you focus kind of on those things and maybe also look for a neighborhood that's walkable, I think you're going to do the best in terms of real estate appreciation over the next 5 to 10 years. If you guys are looking to buy a house or a real estate investment property in Miami and you want help finding which zip codes best meet the criteria I just described, please reach out to me on my website. I offer personal one-on-one coaching services where we can learn what your real estate goals are, and we can walk through the data in the markets that you're interested in to find the neighborhoods and zip codes that are best for investment. So if you're interested in that, go to www.reventureconsulting.com and submit a contact form. Make sure to leave your name, number, and email, as well as a brief description about your interest in real estate. Until next time, this is Nick from Reventure Consulting signing off.